Hi, I'm Barb, Maple PhD, and I have been counting through my top 50 games of all time. If you have missed any of them, I will link them in the description below and in the little information box up here. But I can hardly wait to get to the top 10, so let's just dive right in. My number 10 is The Lost Ruins of Arnak. This is a deck building game that has some worker placement in it as well, where you are building up your deck in order to place out archaeologists on this board to discover new sites and collect treasures, as you do as archaeologists. All right, we're not going to think about the theme too much. You're going to be collecting these items in order to move up on a research track, which gets you other things in the game, and you're going to try and chain various things together where, as you're moving up on the research track, if you move something up, you'll get a coin. Well, that'll help you buy a card later or help you pay off one of the guardians who's in the jungle, because when you discover a new site, there is a guardian there that you need to overcome or get some fear, and that fear can gum up your deck and also gives you negative points at the end of the game. I love this game for how much there is going on. For me, though, the first expansion, the Leaders expansion, is a must play. Maybe for new players, I would play without it just so everyone can get the lay of the land for the game. But after that, I would always play with the Leaders. This gives some asymmetric setup to the game where each player has a different character that they're playing and a different deck that they start with, and a special ability that no one else has. And I love what that adds to the game. There's a second expansion that I've really enjoyed the campaign in. I haven't just shuffled everything in to see how that changes things up for the regular game, but I really enjoyed the campaign, and I'm actually planning on playing through it again with a friend. So that tells you how much I like this game. I have played it a lot. I love getting it to the table. And so for all of those reasons, my number 10 is The Lost Ruins of Arnak. My number 9 is Pulsar 2849. This is a dice drafting game where you are going to use those dice in various things that you're doing on the board. The theme here is that you are going out and exploring different stars, dead stars called pulsars, in order to capture their power and beam that back to your society, I think. So in the game, there's this exploration board where you're going to have a rocket that's moving around to the different stars. You're also going to have a headquarters board where you're building up various technologies, which are abilities that give you things in the game. And there's also this technology track you're going to build things up on, competing with other players on that one. So each round you are drafting just 2 dice, which is not enough. This is a game where every turn matters. You are trying to squeeze out everything you can from the turn and maybe chain some things together as you're doing them, because maybe the technology board gives you a boost if you do a certain action. So you want to do that action as much as possible. But then you're neglecting your headquarters board, and you want to make sure to build that out because there are some special things you might get on that board by building it out. And so like so many of Vladimir Sushi's games, there are a limited number of turns and a limited number of actions on each of those turns. And all of that comes together in this just frustrating, but in the best possible way kind of game where you just don't know that you're going to get much done by the end of the game. And when you get to the end, you certainly haven't done everything you wanted, but you're satisfied with how far you made it with the few turns that you've had. So if you don't love that kind of game, you're not going to like this one, but I love that in a game. And so Pulsar 2849 is my number 9. My number 8 is Imperial Settlers: Empires of the North. This is a card-driven game where each player takes a different deck of cards that represents some kind of empire, and started in the north, not so much after some of the expansions. And throughout the game, you're going to be playing out cards into your empire that give you different actions. There is also an action board in the center of the table that everyone uses. You don't block anyone from those actions, so it's not like you care too much what other people are doing there. But there's there's also a shared exploration board that has these different islands that you can go to and either explore to get some resources or conquer in order to bring them into your empire and give you an ongoing ability of some sort. I love exploring all of the different factions in this game. I struggle each time that we play whether to play one of my favorite factions and just explore it a little deeper, or grab another one, or one I haven't played in a while because I want to remember what that one was like. I love the art in this game. It is so cute, and every time I play, I notice new little details on the cards, and it just comes together in this really fun experience. There isn't a whole lot of player interaction, which is fine with me. You can mess with other players by spending these raise tokens in order to disable one of their cards for the round, but that's a token that at least I've found is often hard to come by, and you want that to conquer new lands when you're going out and exploring. So you do have to give up something pretty good in order to screw with other people in the game, and we tend not to do that very much. But all of this comes together into a really fun package, one that I like exploring again and again. The base box has several different factions in it. I have also bought all of the expansions. I couldn't tell you which ones were base and which ones are expansions anymore, but I love exploring every single one of the decks in this game. And so for all of those reasons, Imperial Settlers: Empires of the North is my number 8. My number 7 is The Loop. This is a cooperative game where players are working together in order to defeat Dr. Foe, who is trying to destroy the timeline. There's a board at the center of the table that has different eras in time, and you're going to be moving your agents around those, chasing Dr. Foe and these little duplicates that he's throwing down on different eras in time. This one has a little cube tower at the center where, at the beginning of the round, when Dr. Foe is doing his things to mess up your game, you drop some cubes in, and it gives you a little bit of variability for where the bad things might happen, which can be great because maybe the one that's right in the middle is about to explode, and if you can just hope that those cubes go to the different places, you might just make it through one more round without that going into a vortex. But also can be bad because sometimes those other 3 are also bad, and you don't want those cubes going anywhere if you can help it. So I love that for the gimmick. I love all of the different characters in this game. It's a card-driven game where each player has their own deck of cards. You start with 6 cards that are unique to your character, and then throughout time you're going to be getting new cards into your deck. And if possible, trying to kind of tailor the deck to be really good at one thing, or kind of good at everything, depending on what scenarios you're doing and who else you're playing with and the characters that you're playing with. But sometimes you're just trying to get to somewhere that has a new card because you want something better than the starter cards that were in your deck. I have explored this game a lot. I have a couple of the expansions. There is a lot of replayability in the base box itself with, I think, 4 different scenarios that you can play. The base one is great. It's a really good, solid cooperative game. And then you can tweak it and make it a little bit harder or just a little bit different by adding in these different scenarios. And then the expansions add new characters and even more scenarios. A friend of mine and I are working our way through all of the scenarios, and we are struggling with one right now, but we are having so much fun just exploring this game to its fullest, which I don't always do, and that speaks to one of the reasons this is one of my top games. And that is The Loop, my number 7. My number 6 is Meadow. This is a game where you are collecting cards and playing them out in front of you in order to document a walk through nature that you have taken. I love how, on the one hand, this is a very calm, serene game with beautiful art on each of the cards. And on the other hand, it is a brain burner. As you are playing out those cards, you have to match different symbols. Each card that you play out has symbols that are required to be in your tableau when you play that card. But when you play that card, you are going to probably cover up at least one of those symbols so that any future cards in your hand may or may not have that symbol available anymore. And so you are constantly looking at the cards in your hand, trying to decide what order to play them in, and hoping that you don't mess up where you place one card in how you're going to place another, because maybe you all of a sudden lost a symbol that you really needed. And then you have to scramble to get the right card out of the array. I also really like kind of the drafting and action mechanism of this game, where everyone has these little, I don't know, fence post tiles that have different numbers on them. And you slot them into the board where the cards are, and the number on it tells you which card you can take, number 1, 2, 3, or 4, away from where you've placed it. And so over the round, the choices become smaller and smaller. You might hope that a new card comes out that you could really use in the right spot, but by the time it comes out, you can no longer have the right action thing to put there to get that card. But there are ways to mitigate that, because there's another board that you can slot your fence posts onto that give you the ability to take any card from the array or draw a couple of extra cards from any of the decks. And when you do that, you can also fulfill one of the goals that's around the campfire. And I just love at the end of the game when I look at all of the cards that are laid out in front of me and represent the animals and the trees and the houses that I saw on my walk. And just in taking in all of that beauty at the end of the game. So Meadow is my number 6. My number 5 is Underwater Cities. This is a worker placement type game where you are building out a network of cities on a board in front of you. The cities are represented by domes. Because they are underwater. You need to build tunnels between your cities, because otherwise you're going to be out in the water. And then you have to build these little farms and other structures around there in order to support your growing network of cities. This is, again, one of those really tight games where, as you're looking at how many actions you have each round, it never seems like enough. In this one, you're going to have a hand of cards, and you're going to be playing out your key cards, I guess, they're not really workers, on different spots on the board. And you're going to play a card and play that worker, and if the worker matches the color of the card that you play out, you get the benefit of the card. If it doesn't match it, you have to discard it without getting anything. And so one of the things you're doing in this game is constantly looking at the cards in your hand, weighing which ones are the best ones to do first, versus the spots that you really want to take. Because maybe I really want that science spot that upgrades things on my board, and I know my opponents are going to want that space as well. So maybe it's worth going there and not having a matching card to get, some extra materials or actions on my turn. But maybe I can make it one more round before they all go there, and then maybe I'll have that yellow card that I need. And so it's those decisions in this game that I love agonizing over, again, in the best possible way. I know I'm making these games sound hard, and they are hard, but in kind of the way that exercises my brain in the way that it just loves to be exercised. And so Underwater Cities has to be my number 5. My number 4 is the Grand Carnival. This is a game where you are building up a carnival, but you're doing it through this double layer tile building, where you first have to place these foundation tiles that show some mixture of grass and squares where you can build rides and attractions. And so you're going to have to be thinking ahead as you're placing your foundations to make sure that you're lining up those construction squares in the right places in order to play the rides and attractions into your carnival. But there's also a limited number of those attractions, and some of them of each size. And so your opponents may be taking the ones that you are working toward. So there's also a little bit of a race, and you're kind of watching your opponents to see what they want to get. By the end of the game, you want to have at least one ride of each size if you can. They also need to have tickets on them. They need to be popular, or else clearly they're not worth anything. And you also want sets of different sizes of them. So, 3 size 3 if you can, or 3 size 5 would be even better, but is super hard to do. So you're also moving people through your carnival on those grassy spaces, and that's how you're getting tickets on your rides. This one, again, it exercises my brain in that way that I love, of the double layer tile building. I really like having to kind of plan ahead and seeing which attractions might work with which tiles are available. And you're doing this through an action selection where the power of the action is like 1 through 5, but you get only one of those powers each round, so you're going to go 1 through 5 during a single round, and then you'll get them all back. So maybe the number 5 ride is the one you really want, but you're only going to be able to do that once per round. So you're going to have to plan ahead of how you make that happen. And so the Grand Carnival, I also love the theme. The art is really cute. And so all of it comes together to be my number 4, the Grand Carnival. My number 3 is Space Base. This is a pure comfort game for me. It's one that I can pull out no matter how I'm feeling and have a great time with it. In this game, players are building up a space station in front of themselves with different spaceships, I guess. Honestly, the theme is kind of pasted on here, but I don't care. I still love it. On each turn, the active player is going to roll a pair of dice, and everyone gets to activate those dice if they have cards in the right places. So on your own turn, you're going to activate the cards that are, on the main part of your board. But as you add new cards to these sectors that are numbered 1 through 12 to correspond to the totals of all of the dice rolls, as you add new cards there, you will flip that card up and tuck it under the top of your board so that a slightly different side is showing, and that's a side that you can activate on someone else's turn. And in this game, when you are activating these sectors, you can use the dice as the sum, or you can use each die individually. And so the numbers 1 through 6 are actually fairly valuable, and you want to fill those in as much as possible because you're going to hit those quite a bit. I love this game. We have different strategies for it. I've seen players just run away by loading up their 7 or 8 and being able to collect on other players' turns a lot. I've also seen players win who kind of do more of a balanced build out where they get a lot of points on almost any roll, or at least a lot of money, currency, in order to buy things on almost any roll. Now, there can be a runaway leader problem in this one where all of a sudden someone wins with their 40 points, which is what triggers the end of the game, and someone else has like 15 points, which doesn't always feel great, but somehow it doesn't bother us as much in this game as it might in others. And I don't know if that's because everyone is engaged on every single turn by watching those dice rolls, or if it's just a popcorn game for us, and it's okay if you have a runaway leader for a game that's just super fun and that's all you play it for. But it is super fun, and Space Base is my number 3. My number 2 is Ark Nova. This is a zoo building game where you have a zoo in front of yourself that you are going to be placing out habitats and then adding animals to the various habitats. At the same time, you are going to be concentrating on these conservation projects in order to bolster the animals out in the wild as well. I've talked about this many times before on this channel because it is one of my favorite games. I love how this focuses on both sides of modern zoos, where you have the side where, yes, you have to attract the public to bring in money, to bring in awareness, to make people care about the animals in order to save them. But also there is this huge focus on bettering our environment and helping those animals who are still in the wild. And I like how this comes together in a fairly heavy game. I think of a zoo theme as a simplistic game, and this is anything but. You are doing this action selection where you've got these 5 cards down in front of you, and you're picking one. its position in the line tells you how strong it is. And then when you use it, you move it to the number 1 position and everything slides down. That means that you can use any of these actions as many times as you want, but it's not going to be at a great power, and you kind of want to let it slide down to the end a little bit more. But maybe those actions that are in the 4 or 5 slots aren't as useful to you right now, and it's better to just do those 1s and 2s and 3s. I love that decision making. I love chaining things together where you have these supporter cards that you place in, and when you play a bird, you'll get a benefit, or at the end of the round, you'll get a benefit. And so you're constantly looking for these ways to chain things together and make your actions better and better. And I love how all of this comes into a fairly streamlined package with some really great decisions. And so Ark Nova is my number 2. And my number 1, which is going to come as no surprise to anyone who watches this channel that much, is Dungeon Petz. This is a worker placement style game where you are also managing resources in order to run a pet shop with some amazingly weird pets. You are an imp family who has to run out into town in order to buy cages for your pets, or food, or pick up new pets. All the while, you're also showing off your wares to the town through these different exhibitions each round. So you want to be careful about, how many pets you have and who's eating and who's having a magical outburst, because those might all affect that exhibition round. And then, of course, you are also trying to find loving homes for all of these pets. So you want to pay attention to what the customers for each round want, and you're watching out for that as well. As you're playing the game, you're going to be building up your pet shop with amazing cages and pets, and then you get to this phase where you have to satisfy their needs. And as they grow older, and if you have not sold them off to a loving home, you have more and more needs to fulfill. And you do this with these cards that you draw, and this is always a frustratingly delicious part of the game where you are trying to maximize, all of the things that you're paying attention to, those exhibitions and the customers you want to sell to this round, but also making sure that you're keeping them happy, because bad things can happen when you don't keep them happy. And I love how all of this comes together. I love the art so much. All of the pets are so adorable that I can hardly stand it. And in fact, my spouse commissioned a piece of art by the artist for one of my big birthdays a few years ago. And that is how much I love this game and the art in it. And so all of this comes together in just an amazing package to me. And that is Dungeon Petz, my number 1. So there you go. Those are my top 50 games of all time, at least as of September 2024. We'll see if I do this again in a year or two and how much the list changes. But I'd love to hear about some of your favorite games. What would be your top game? Or are there any games on my list that you want to try or that you absolutely love? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear about it. Otherwise, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel so you see when my new videos come out. And you can follow me on Instagram and Blue Sky as MaplePhD, and I have a blog at maplephd.com. We'll see you next time.